Welcome, guys. Another episode of the Florida Hockey Bros podcast. I'm joined by my brother Dario. My name is David. Fresh off a nice win against the Dallas Stars on Wednesday, and we're facing Pittsburgh. Man, Penguins look dreadful. They look really bad. I've actually seen them a few games. I saw their game against Toronto, and they just look bad, man. I don't know what's going on there.
Well, I think Malkin playing great.
He's kind of done. Yeah,
the power play is awful. He turns it over. He just takes lazy shots. He's playing like Ovechkin, like just not giving a shit. And Letang, I think bringing Carlson in hasn't helped. Letang actually got in the way, and so Anadu was wanted to make a flashy move, and I just don't think that was a smart move for the money. They could have added a lot more depth. They have no bottom six depth at all. So anyway,
and I think San Jose did some salary retention, right?
Yeah, and they took on Michael Granlund's contract, which Granlund is playing on San Jose.
Granlund is playing. Yeah, he's playing great.
It's all about fit. It's all about fit, man.
It's all about fit. That's a nice transition into today's topic. Let's talk about some extensions, player extensions with the Panthers and maybe even around the league. We've seen some players resigning recently, and some comparables that we can use. But I don't even want to talk about the money. I just want to talk about the fit of the team of the Florida Panthers right now and what we think is going to work going forward. I'm looking at, signings like Mikola and Rodriguez for 3 years. So I'm going to assume that that's kind of a window with this core, if you want to call it a core, because obviously Bennett and Verhaeghe have one more year remaining on their salary, on their contract. So you have to make a decision there. You have to make a decision on Montour and Reinhart this year. You can also make a decision on Ekblad and Bob starting next season, I believe. So let's get into that. I think we have different opinions on a couple of players. So let's start with Bennett and Lundell. A lot of times you've mentioned to me, that ideally Lundell would slot into that 2C, that second line center position. I know that there's potential with Lundell, but when I watch the games, and lately I've been tracking him a little more, I just don't see, there's something missing there. I don't know if it's not the skill, it's not, his play along the boards, but he's not, I don't know if he's not that strong. I don't know what it is. I don't know where Cito goes from here. It's almost like the same with Spencer Knight, because those are players that you kind of hope to see something. I think they've really pushed Lundell to work out. They've had him in the top line, the second line, when Bennett was out. And I don't know, man. I think that I know where you're coming from. You told me the other day that Bennett, his numbers are not like great, and more than that, his injury history is not great either. And I think that would be the most worrying part of it. But I definitely resign Bennett as my second line center. I just don't know how much money I will give him, but I wanna take the money part of it aside. Just in your head, when you see fit or what makes sense for the team, if you have to choose one of those two guys to resign right now to extend, who would you extend?
Lundell, no question.
So you're gonna bet on him reaching his potential as opposed to what you're already getting from Bennett, regardless of the injury history?
I think Bennett, it's a really, really good, solid second line center if what's around him continues to be consistent. He's had Verhaeghe and Tkachuk, he has a legit scorer on one line, on one wing, and an elite player on the other. And that does help his game a lot. He's very valuable in the playoffs because of his hitting and how hard he plays. But he also can get injured a lot. He has over the last 6 years, hasn't played a full season. The most games he's played is 71. in the last 6 years. It's a pattern. That's not going to change. That's going to continue. We've seen guys like that. He's going to continue to get injured. And also the way he plays, is not a big guy. So that also contributes to it. He's not the most graceful guy out there. So guys like that tend to get injured, and, injuries mount. Those things start to pile up. So that's one concern. He's not a high scorer, which you can live with, but he's also not an elite defender, and he's not an elite face-off guy. You don't trust him as much on your own end. That's why Lundell and Stanley get put out there more, and Barkov, than Bennett. Bennett doesn't kill penalties. He's playing on the power play, but I would argue he's not a great PP1 option. I think he's only there because we don't, Rodriguez, for whatever reason, Maurice switched him out. Maybe it's a left hand versus right hand shooter type thing. But all to say that I think Bennett, for me, it's a perfect third line center. If you tell me he's your third line center for $5 million a year, I'll take him. So you said don't talk about the money, but the money matters. Like, if you're telling me he's a second line center and he's going to sign for 6 or 7, I don't want him. Not for that money. I think long term is not a smart sign, because he, I think, has played as well as he can right now, and he can continue some of that. But I just want to be real. Like, he's not a $6 or $7 million player in terms of production for your regular season, and you do need that eventually to keep sustaining. Lundell has his issues. I think it's a guy who's a very skilled player who doesn't play as physical. That was never his game, and I think he's still building toward that. He's getting better. That's why he doesn't look always as engaged, but he's been playing a lot better with Lusty the last couple of weeks, and they have been really controlling the pucks in the offensive zone, winning a lot of battles. They don't get scored on a ton, even with Cousins out there, who's a liability, honestly, on defense. So, I think that Lundell, with more maturity and time on a second line with skill around him, I think he can provide a lot more. And he is trusted in the playoffs to go against other teams' top lines. He did it against the Leafs last year. And that's only going to get better. So I think the value he brings two ways: the way he can play the faceoffs, the way he can defend. He's responsible. He's smart. He doesn't get injured. He's a big kid, actually, just not naturally physical. The upside is there. The only other thing I could see Cito doing is trading him because of his value, and a lot of people would want him because of his upside. But that kind of upside, you cannot teach that two-way stuff, man. That's what keeps some guys out of the lineup. The main reason Mackey is not on this team is that he's not a two-way player naturally. He's pure attack, and Maurice doesn't want that right now. He doesn't need a liable guy on the top 6 who's young and doesn't, needs to learn the game. Lundell needs to learn a lot of the game, needs to be more confident, needs to shoot more, but he has that in him where, like, he already is an elite defender. And teaching that is really, really hard. So to me, the value in that is really, really high. And because of he does have offensive skills, he's shown in the past. I just think he's not putting up more points because of the line he's playing in. Lustrani is having a down year on offense, not shooting or scoring a lot. And Cousins, what can you expect? So anyway, I think long-term, Lundell is the right move for 2C. It would be a different style for that second line. It wouldn't be like a bruising line. But that's okay because you have Kachuk there. You could have somebody else. But I don't know. For me, skill's still going to matter in this league going forward. And you can add more of that physicality to your third line. If you move Lundell out of that line, then either put Bennett there or find another 3C has some skill and is also physical. But that's just where I'm at with him, man. Like, it's fun to watch and all that until, Bennett's injured and can't play in the playoffs like it happened last year or whatever. Like, you can count on him, or he goes cold and doesn't score for 7 straight games in the playoffs.
I agree that maybe he cannot be your second line center, Bennett. I just don't know the solutions to that problem because the team doesn't really have the money yet to go and get that next top player that's going to complete those top 2 lines. I think the Reinhardt on the top line was a bit of an experiment this year, and because he's playing for a contract and they want to see if he can hang, I'm assuming he's asking for first line money, and that's why he's up there. It just happens to work out. I don't know if they're connecting the dots and saying, well, Reinhardt was on the third line last year, and that line was great. Not a ton of production per se, but, Lusty had 17 goals, I think. Lundell had like 15. And obviously Reinhardt had more than that. But if you're looking at it from that perspective, then you can make a case that, yeah, Lundell and Lusty both need an offensive player on that line that can truly attack. Maybe that it's a perfect line for a player like Mackey to start, because he's going to have, protection going back. He doesn't have to be the first one to skate back to defend. Lundell will do that, Lusty, naturally. I love Bennett. He's one of my top 5 favorite players on the team. I love his style, that he's a little off. I think on a TNT, the commentary, one of the guys, I forgot exactly what he said, but it was something like, yeah, he's quickly to go off the rails. The way he started that third period, I think it was, with a penalty, or the second period, I don't remember. I think it was the third. Yeah, that's when they scored and tied. That he hit, Rupe Hintz there. Yeah, I just don't know who you get, and I don't know how do you replace that. I'm not comfortable with the idea of in a year or two Lundell's our 2C. I don't think he can even. I don't think for me it's just the offense, and I don't mean scoring, because Barkov's not going to give you a ton of goals, but you have to be a playmaker. You have to be able to find your teammates when you go in the zone. You have to be able to do a lot of that stuff. I don't know if he's there yet. I think that he's almost like a reverse young player, and that's why he's been on the team since he was very young, because he already, like you mentioned, has a lot of the foundation for two-way play. He's solid tracking back. I get that. PK, all that. I just don't think that he can drive a line. I don't think that he can actually push that second line forward. Kachuk is not going to create a ton either, even though he's a good passer and a scorer. And then Verhaeghe is just a pure puck hawk. Verhaeghe is not going to pass. So I don't know. I think it's tricky. I kind of wanted to get into that because you have to make a decision on Bennett and Verhaeghe for past next season. And that's going to be tough. All right, let's move on to...
No, well, I mean, yeah, but just real quick, I just want to say, it's... People, you get caught up on what you're seeing right now, and I think that you're not taking into account all the other factors, like the fact that Lundell doesn't have any legit wingers right now. Lustrine is not scoring. He's not a natural scorer. He's always been a center, and he plays hard on the boards, and that's what he's providing for that line. That's why they are controlling the puck on the offense oftentimes, which is great for a third line. So that's the value you're getting. They're not scoring a ton, but they're also not giving up a ton, and they're giving you time on the offensive zone. But Lustrine is not a natural scorer. And, last year he scored a ton because he got to play on the second line and scored 17 goals. But so he's not giving Lundell options. He's helping battle on the boards and that, and then Cousins is not a natural scorer. If they had that on that line, you might see Lundell flash his skills a lot more. And you would see him, I think, put up a lot more points because he showed that in his rookie year, and he saw some of that last year as well, where you could see the playmaking, you could see the vision, you could see the smooth, and he still has that. He hasn't lost it, but he's not able to use that as much with the line mates that he has. He's the only one who can really genuinely carry the puck. Lustig can do a little bit of that, but so I think it's also unfair to evaluate him this way. Has it been super consistent or no? He's not a world beater, but he's also put up 10 assists so far. He is there. It's just you need to give him the chance. So I think if he were playing more consistently on a second line, and you have to give him the time, then I think he could take off. That's all I'm saying. And I like Bennett. I like him on my team. I like him at $5 million next year. 5 times 5, I'll keep him. My issue again is not the player so much, is the money. Because if Bennett wants to use his reputation now to make $7 million a year and be a 2C in a team, I don't want that team to be the Panthers. Just my opinion for that money. Because then that does mean you need to move on from Lundell, and then you're going to lose that. So that's all I mean, bro. It's just the same way Reinhardt. Everybody it's all about the money. Reinhardt at 7.5. I love him. Reinhardt at 8.59. Fuck off. So that's how I evaluate it. I don't dislike any of these players. I just,
Yeah, no, I agree. Like if you have to keep one, and that means that you have to let go of the other, then obviously.
Yeah, if Ebla were making $6 million right now or 5.5, like a lot of these like second pair guys, like the guys in Carolina, Brett Pesci or whatever, Shea, whatever. Ebla for that money, I wouldn't mind, but at 7.5, no, because he's overpaid.
Yeah, but that's a prime example right there. That's a good comparable for Lundell, because Ekblad got that contract because of his offensive output as a defenseman, because he was never like the greatest defending defenseman in the league. But he could score, and that's valuable, obviously, in the league. That's extra.
But he
scoring.
wasn't scoring. Ebla has always been overvalued.
Yeah, but at the beginning, but that's my point. That's my point with Lundell, that Ekblad got that contract because of the potential to be a scorer, to be this high scorer. He was like top 10
I don't think Cito's not going to give Lundell $7 million, bro. That isn't happening.
Well, he's not, but he's going to have to either give him a bridge deal.
Yeah, give him 3 or 4, and I think that's fine. That's fair for what he gives you. He's giving you qualities. He's a better center than Max Domi. He's more valuable than Max Domi in the playoffs. I tell you that, right? And Max Domi's making 3 for the Leafs, right? Playing third line center right now. Like, just an example. Like, to me, Lundy, you can move up. I mean, you can at least reliably move him up to a top 6 if you have to, and know that he's going to use some quality games. So, and he played well with Barkov in the finals when they got the injuries. So it's there, man. I just mean the money. Like, Ekblad is different. Ekblad to me was always overvalued because he just had the offensive skill, but he actually never put up the numbers that other offensive skill defensemen give you. He's never put up Montour numbers like from last year. And we're talking about giving Montour $7 million, and he just had a better year than Ebla has ever had last year. So to me, that's where Ebla is way overpaid. Like, if the previous regime overvalued some of these guys, Huberdeau was overvalued, Ebla was overvalued, the skill was there, but not the. And this segues to a later conversation, but about like the types of styles of play, and how you value players. But anyway, I value Bennett for what he gives you. He's a third line center in a top team for $4 or $5 million, and that extra money because of all the other skills that he does have. But beyond that, to me, he's not a 2C for the 2C money. Because if you compare him to like Don Tavares, or you compare him to some of these other 2Cs, Stamkos, like, he's just not that. So again, I love him on my team, just not as one of the top 4 or 5 players on your team. I don't think long term that's a sustainable.
Yeah, if you look at him as an individual, yeah, I agree with you. It's just what he does to the second line. He just glues the second line.
Yeah, bro, and I hope Cito can figure it out with him. Give him 5 times. Yeah, I don't think 5, and maybe he stays.
I don't think he's gonna look for like great money. I think the only way he resigns for another team is if they offer like maybe a longer term, maybe give him 7-8 years. I mean, he's young. He's 26, I think, still.
Yeah, he's 27, I think now. But yeah.
Yeah, so I get that, and you do have to make a decision. And I do think whatever you decide this year, if you decide to extend Reinhardt and Montour and Forsling,
there's not going to be a lot of money, so
then you're basically
he's going to have to move on from Bob and Ekblad if he wants to keep anyone else.
I think Bob is gone. Like, Bob is going to get traded next season at some point. If not in the offseason, they'll have to talk to him. I know he's a competitor, and if he's playing at a high level, that's great. And if Spencer Knight was backing him up, and Spencer was like improving yearly, then I could understand maybe writing that out. Because if you have that tandem and they're both good in the playoffs,
you need the money.
And you're like, I'm looking at other teams, exclude the Leafs, and there's some exceptions of teams that overspend. But we just don't have the money to pay.
You need the money.
All these guys. That's why we keep bringing in rentals every year.
Cito's gonna trade him, and Ekblad is on hot water. You need the money, man. Yeah.
I think you picked one. I think that's why like the rumor was out there that they were looking to extend Montour and Forsling, and I think that's the right thing. Build up your top 4 on defense. And then you already have your top 2 lines for this season set pretty much. For next year, you only have to worry about Reinhardt. Everybody else on the top 6 is signed through next year. So that's basically the only decision you have to make. I think, they'll look at different options for that top wing. It's not going to be Lusty. Lundell doesn't fit up there. You need a scorer on the top line like Reinhardt. What Reinhardt's doing is great. He's a good passer. He's playing well, but he's shooting the puck every time he gets a chance. Obviously, he's trying to, get the stats up, get the money up.
I think Cito will definitely try to keep Reinhardt because of what he does on the power play, because he's a good two-way player. He can play center and take face-offs, and he doesn't get injured a ton. So I just think the value is there for him.
He's really productive on the power play.
If you see him get traded, you can take it to the bank that it's because
he already has something. Yeah,
Cito didn't want to pay him more than But other than that, I think you value him more than Verhaeghe. Like, Verhaeghe is the guy that I could see being traded. If Reinhardt gets re-signed, Verhaeghe's probably gone.
Oh, yeah. Verhaeghe, and if you give Reinhardt 8 or more, if that's what it comes out to after they work out a contract, then Verhaeghe, unless he wants to stay on at like 4 or 5, which is, I think he's at 4.1 or something like that, and Bennett's like at 5.
And you just have to bring on Mackey and then sign somebody to help you.
And to your point, like if you are able to trade Bob, retain 40%, just 4 million, you're off 6 mil. You do the same with Ekblad, maybe retain $1 mil or 2, maybe 2 mil. Someone will definitely take Ekblad because he has a reputation in the league. And Bob, like any team that's ready to win now, the next 2 years, like the LA Kings would be a good team because I don't know, who do they have? Talbot, and he's not known to be a good goalie.
Yeah, so. with the cap going up with salary retention and 2 years left, Bob is in good shape for his age. So
he can give you another 2-3 years.
He's movable next season. I think probably the off season is when you trade him and try to figure out your goalie tandem.
Even for a team like Bob will be ideal at 6 mil in a team like the Maple Leafs because you have Wall at a cheap contract for another like 2 years, I think, this season, the next, if I'm not mistaken, and then you can have Bob just be back there. You re-sign Wall at like 4 mil. Now you have 10 mil tied up in your goalie tandem, which is fine if you're trying to win a cup, like things like that. And there's not like a ton of like above average goalies around the league anyway. Yeah. Bob is just an above average goalie that gives you like average stats during the season. Yeah, you just hope that he catches fire in the playoffs like he did last year. Right. All right, let's move on. We also have, you want to talk about some stuff around the league. I think we've talked about the Panthers already in the past this season. They definitely look much better than last year. Obviously, last year they were trying to find their footing at this point in the season. We went through a little bit of a crisis, actually, in December last year. I remember we had a couple of losing streaks and stuff like that. So I'm very happy with the team. I think they'll be fine. The East, the Atlantic, at least, is pretty competitive. Right now, you have the Red Wings and the Leafs. We can talk about the Red Wings a little bit. You told me before we started recording that they're frauds. We were talking about their scoring differential, their goal differential. I agree with you, man. I watched a lot the whole third period against the Sharks yesterday. I've watched them a couple other times in the season, and they tend to cruise. There's a what's the word? There's a pattern that a lot of these teams have. A lot of these teams like the Leafs, the Red Wings, teams that are good on offense, but maybe don't have the defense or goaltending yet. And they just tend to cruise, man. A lot of teams tend to score a couple of goals. Like the Leafs are famous for this. They'll anytime they have a 1-goal lead, they just sit back. They sit back. They change their style. They just look to go on the rush or whatever. And I think for the Red Wings, it's the same. I mean, the Brinkat was he wasn't bad yesterday. He was just not out there. Like his stats are just weird. Like he didn't contribute on either end. So yeah, what do you think about teams like that? Teams like Vancouver is another one, right? That we've mentioned that the underlying stats are not say that's not a great team. They're not as good as their play their play shows.
Well, they're overachieving on their scoring. They've scored like a ton of more goals than they should have, and they're also allowing a lot less than they should be allowing because of their goaltending. And so their expected goal differential is ridiculous. And I don't know that that's very sustainable or translates to the playoffs when things get a lot tighter. And then your structure and the ability to win those games really matters. And I think with Detroit, it's the same thing. I think we see it with the Senators. And this is why these teams have up and down seasons. Like we see with Jersey now not being as good as last year. We see with the Senators not being as good as last year. The Sabres not being as good. And then you see Vancouver taking off a bit. You see Detroit taking off a bit. Those are both teams that have a lot of young talent, but I could see both of those teams maybe making the playoffs. And they're getting bounced in the first or second round, and then maybe next year they kind of drop back down to earth. And the main reason for that, man, is system and structure, like style of play. Though you could tell that Detroit and the Senators and the Sabres, they really rely on the skill that they've drafted and some of the guys that they brought in who are shooters and skaters. Like Detroit has a lot of small guys who can skate and shoot, and they have a ton of goals scored above expected, and that's because their shooting has been at a very high level. But when you watch them play, they're not as physical. The structure isn't there. They have some guys on defense like Sherratt and Gustus Bear who be liabilities come playoff time on defense. And now they have Patrick Kane, which is another type of guy that I think they have a few of in that team. So, are they a good team? Yeah, they got skill and all that. They're a good regular season team. And they're right now pretty hot. But they're also playing a lot of soft competition, and they didn't look great. And when they went to Sweden, they couldn't hold on to leads and stuff. So I just don't buy it. I think it's because you need to really provide structure for these guys. There's a difference to me between like the Ovechkins of the Washington Capitals or the Penguins or the Bruins or even the Hurricanes, who are now like going through a whole mess. I think maybe Brendan Moore might be time for him to go.
I think on the Hurricanes, real quick, I just watching them. Obviously, their goaltending is like dead last in the league or something like that.
Yeah, that's the other part. Yeah.
Goal save expected. But the problem with that is that when you have a system that's so defensive or so back checking, focused, you lose that. That's why you're losing these games like this, because your defense, if you have a leaky defense plus Orlov, I don't know what's going on there. Maybe it was just the Bruins system or whatever, but that's not working out. We thought that they were going to get to the finals this year, possibly win it.
But that's what happens. I think Carolina just might need a different voice behind the bench. Brendan has been there for a long time, and he's a very, very tough coach and very systems strict coach. So anyway, but their system is sound for the playoffs. Makes it really hard for other teams either way. And so to me, that's why I think there's a model of the Penguins, which in their prime had some skill, but they didn't even have a great defensive core outside of Letang. And yet they were able to win because they all play a great hard system. They checked, they were dirty. I mean, people have been saying that Crosby and the Penguins are dirty for a long time. Washington's kind of dirty and hits and has a bunch of killers on their team in their prime. And I know that they didn't always win, but they were always there and they were hard to play against, and they ended up winning. The Bruins the same, Carolina, Tampa, even Colorado. Makar is a physical player. McKinnon's a bit of a psycho. Kadri on their run was doing dirty plays. So to me, that's one model. And I think a lot of these Canadian teams are the Maple Leafs, Vancouver, Senators, to some extent the Jets. So the Jets are a lot more physical and have a good defensive structure. And then the Red Wings and Sabres and stuff. You draft all that skill the way the Panthers did with Trocheck and, Huberdeau and Barkov and Ekblad.
I was going to mention that.
Never give them a system, so they didn't win shit. And
system, or you never completed the team. It was always. I remember our top line in 2015 when we won the division. I think there was a short season that year. Was Barkov, Huberdeau, Jagger. We were top heavy because there was nothing else, after that.
Yeah, that's true. But you also need the top players to drive the play and to be physical and to have a certain. Not everybody, but at least most of the guys. And I think that You watch the Panthers now, they got the skill. Like, you saw what Reinhardt and Barkov did the other day with the back and forth. Like, the skill's there. They could do more of that. Rodriguez has some actual pretty nice skill, but they don't flash it every game. And I think part of the reason is they're trying to stick to the structure. They're trying to have those habits. Dump it in, bro. Like, how many times do you see, I watch these other games, and it's kind of jarring because I'm so used to the Panthers, like watch the Panthers so much. The Panthers are really a for-checking team first. Like, if the space there, they're going to drive. They go on odd man rushes now. Montrose joining even Mikola. Like, we're seeing the rushes happen, but more often than not, you see dumpings. And one thing that Maurice said, which I told you earlier that I wanted to mention, is they asked him why we didn't look great the first 5 minutes against Dallas, the Stars, because they were out shooting us 6-0, and we were not getting much going. And then eventually we dominated the rest of the period. And he said, well, the first 5 dump-ins, I think it was, the goalie touched the puck and got it out. And Dallas is excellent at breaking out once they have the puck and they can see you. So he said, it was just we were doing really shitty dump-ins, and they work at that stuff. And he was saying, like, we were lazy in the way that we were doing that. The minute we sort of adjusted to that, we took over and started to dominate on the offensive zone. And that is a coach telling you, even in an interview, like, even something as simple as a dump-in, like, that is so important in how they do that and how they're teaching the team to do that. In the playoffs, that's exactly what you need, right? And if you watch the Penguins, you watch whatever, yes, you might see a guy like try to like sneak in here or there because they have the skill, but more often than not, you see them dump it in, you see him being smart. And that's what the Panthers are trying to do. Then I watched the Senators and Leafs yesterday, and it was a shit show of turnovers, guys trying to weave through the neutral zone, making bad plays, turning it over on their own blue line over and over and over. And, you often get away with it. Like the Senators had like how many breakaways and I had dangerous chances. They just couldn't score as a wall, who unfortunately, because he was made to work so much, got injured. But that's all I mean. Like, you can see how that won't translate to the playoffs. You can see why the Senators are struggling. They have a ton of skill. Stützle, it's an incredibly talented player. He is terrible at turning it over. He makes a lot of dumb plays. I saw yesterday Batherson on a 3-on-2, like glide back into the defense, and the Leafs couldn't get the puck to the front of the net, but there was a guy by himself in front of the net, and I saw just Batherson like sliding behind the guy, and I'm thinking, Maurice sees that, and you're gonna watch that video, and he's gonna tell you, like, if that's Lundell, Lustrine, whoever it is, like, hey, you can't do that, right? The next game you're gonna see that guy like going, and that's the culture. Like, for whatever reason, those guys either are not hearing it, or they're not being told or expected or being held accountable. I don't think that's happening with the Leafs, because you see a lot of their top 2 lines glide. They can dominate for a couple of shifts, but then they glide for 3 shifts, and Maurice doesn't allow for that. Whenever that happens, hard practice, yelling, saying this horseshit, and then you see the team respond right away. So, and again, we're not perfect. We had a bad start to the third period against Dallas. That was a lazy start, and they tied it, and we had to kind of wake up. But it's more easy to manage because it's in game and it's for like a few minutes or a few shifts. But it's not a habit. We also see the Panthers more often have a lot of control. So anyway, that's all I mean, man. Like, it's a style thing. It's like the guys you draft, but then what you do with them. And if you don't make them work, like Stützle doesn't know how to defend at all. He's been in the league now like 3-4 seasons. Put up like he's going to be a 100-point scorer at some point. No one taught this guy how to defend. And what does Maurice does with Mackey? Get your ass to the AHL. Learn how to defend, because otherwise I can't use you here. So to me, that's the different in culture, the different in drafting. Look at who Cedar drafts. I told you, Josh Davis, we just signed to ELC. Like, dude, you got to get the guys who can score and play both ways. Sauching, Devine, go down the list. Mackey's an exception. He's a pure scorer. So they're working with him, sort of like, they are like getting guys who can play 2 ways. And to me, that's how you build it. That's how Boston built it, how Penguins built it, and how Tampa built it, So I don't know. I'm just learning about the game as I watch, but I think that, to me, that's why those teams are a mirage. I just don't buy. I know Tockett's trying to do some stuff with Vancouver, but I don't see it. And I don't see it with the Red Wings. I don't think they'll get to like the conference finals.
Yeah, and I heard I think it was Jamal Mayers. It was on Kipper and Warren the other day. They asked him about what is it about coaches like John Cooper, why, if he feels like it's good for coaches to just have like a 3-year stint in any team and then kind of move on. But he talked about these coaches that can be there in a team for so long because they're able to adapt and they're able to get their players to buy in to their system, and then the players just kind of take over. You don't have to. There's a difference, right, in getting players to just play your system because they have to, and then playing your system because it works, and they're gonna carry that on. And I think coaches like Tocchet and Tortorella, like, they wear out players, and that's why they're great like the first 2 years, and then it just kind of goes downhill. Yeah, I get the same feeling when I watch other games, just like you. I always compare it to the Panthers, like players. And then, like, I think if you're like aware of what makes a player good, like Sidney Crosby, his physical and all, but his positioning on the ice is great. His vision is great. His anticipation is off the charts. He's passing it to the spot before the skater even gets there, going into the zone, which is not easy to do. You look at Barkov, and he's just everywhere. Barkov is a big guy. He's not the speediest, but he does have sneaky speed for his size. And there was a podcast some guy did. I forgot his name, but he did a podcast just on Barkov. He's an NHL podcaster, and I didn't listen to the podcast, but I saw he put a 2.5 minute highlight video for this year for Barkov, and it's just, there was like 3 goals in the whole highlights. It's just him stealing pucks, passing it, skating through people. Like, you can't. It's hard to take the puck away from Barkov.
He doesn't cheat the game, is what somebody else on the Keeper and Born said, interviewed and being asked about types of players and stuff, and teams that are teams to beat. He mentioned the Panthers as a team to beat because I think he's a Senators commentator or whatever, reporter, and he said, like, yeah, he watched that Panthers Senators game, and he was like, dude, that Panthers team is scary. Like, how hard everyone plays, like every single play there. And then he talked about Barkov, like, he's still like probably the most underrated guy in the league because he doesn't cheat the game despite his talent. Like, he never does. I told you yesterday, Matthews gliding out there on defense, bro, cheating. He's spending 2 minutes out on the ice, and you know why? Because I'm like, how does he have energy? You see, like, have 3 longs? No, dude. The dude like lies for half the shifts.
Matthews and Warner are
so they cheat. No, they cheat. They cheat, and then they go on offense, and the skill, like in the regular season, that's gonna. But then in the playoffs, when you can't get away with that, he just gets so much tougher. And I'm with you, man, with Crosby. Like, I always hated Crosby because he's a bit.
Yeah, I don't like him. Let me get that straight. I hate him. I don't like him as a person or whatever.
But as a player, I would want him. I mean, if you told me that out of all the elite players of the last 15, 20 years, who you want, he's the guy. Like, he's not just a great leader, but he's the smartest guy because his skill is there, but he's not a flashy. He doesn't have the skill like Marner has. He doesn't have this, like, it doesn't look as flashy with Crosby. Like, there's a ton of guys that look a lot flashier, but this dude, the vision and anticipation is incredible. He's passing, and he's scoring. He's a really, really good shooter. So anyway, like, but also a physical guy, also a guy that doesn't like to lose the puck. He'll go after you if he loses the puck. He'll hit you. He'll do some dirty shit. If he's kind of like a Chuck. So, anyway, just saying that's why it matters, and that's why I'm happy. Like, that Cito has committed to a certain style with the team, with Maurice as a coach, and then the guys that he's been drafting. I've realized a pattern of the types of players he's going after, and then you see him in juniors. They're never going to be the guys that in juniors are putting 130 points up, and usually those are the guys that get drafted in the top 10. But and obviously you would take one of those guys if you could, because you can try to work with them in that skill. But
yeah, but you also got to pay those guys. You got to pay those guys a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's the fact that he went for Saushin. Like, Saushin could have gone later, but I think you look at Saushin, you look at Josh Davis, who all of a sudden he was like a 6th-round pick. Like, Devine was a 7th-round pick, like killing in college.
Yeah, I think Davies was a 7th-round pick.
Yeah, they're like super late round picks. But then, and even Sordiff was a 3rd-round pick. Benning was a 4th-round pick, and Benning's looking good. Mackey was a late 1st-rounder. He's just like really going after certain types of players, and to me, that mentality of go after leadership, go after smart guys that can translate and can give you steady play forever, even They don't need to be 100-point guys. They could be just guys that are not going to cheat the game. In the NHL, man, there's a ton of value in that. And then you just kind of round it out with some skills, some good scouting. And I'm really, really happy. It's proven by now. You kind of have to say, I know this is our team, so we got to give ourselves props on this end. We don't have the Matthews and Marners, and we don't have the flashy scores. We're not going to make a ton of highlights, but man, Mikola and Rodriguez, I mean, those signings, bro, for that money. Like Rodriguez is making the same money as Max Domi, you know what I'm saying? Playing on the first line and scoring all those points and having a big plus minus. And
yeah, he opens up the.
And he's been shooting and getting chances. It's not like he could have had a lot more points.
Yeah, I don't know if he's doing it on his own or if Maurice told him like, hey, just take your shots, like keep taking.
And
your
the
shots.
way he looks on the boards, the way he turns on the boards.
Yeah, he did. I think it was last game. He had the boards. He just like snuck.
He's
past
slippery as shit.
Yeah.
But he can do that when he has it going. Like these guys are very slippery. They can turn. And Rodriguez is an elite turner. This dude, like he's a lanky, like he has long legs, but he can turn quick. And he just doesn't have the natural elite skill. But that's why he's never going to be like a $6 million player probably. But and then Mikola, man, I mean, they the defense is there, but then the offensive skill.
Yeah, what's most impressive to me about Mikola is his initiative. Like he pinches in at the right time. He's very aggressive back and forth. He's fast for being such a tall guy. Yeah, that's probably one of those signings. Like you have to be very proud of
the Leafs are like, who, what defenseman, like Klingsberg didn't work. Who are we going to sign? Tanev, whoever. Like Mikola is exactly the type of player that they could have used in the top four. And we got him for 2.5.
They could have signed Mikola.
2.5.
They could have signed Mikola, OEL, and Kulikov instead of Klingberg and whoever else. Did they sign another defenseman? I don't remember.
Connor Timmins they traded for.
Oh, that's right, Timmins. They could have done that. They didn't need. They probably didn't need Bertuzzi. They could have gone against, for a couple of other forwards. Yeah. Those markets like the Leafs and someone else mentioned like goaltending, like how like elite goaltending gets you there, which is true, but it's not. Otherwise, the Rangers and the Islanders would be in the cup every year, alternating because they have two of the best goalies, if not the two best goalies in the league in general. So I don't believe that. Like the Knights had the perfect team last season, really good defense, experienced defense. They were physical and they could score, very balanced team. And then Aiden Hill played amazing the whole playoffs. He's been great this year as well. That's why the record's so good, actually. Yeah, but I don't know. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think you could get hot, like, the St. Louis Blues did, and win a cup that way. But if Columbus couldn't do it with Bobrovsky, I don't think that's, and I think that also matters for team construction. And then looking at the Panthers, we know the solution. I was just looking at it, actually. Let's talk about that. Bob, yeah, starting July of 2024, this coming year, he has to submit his, I think it's a 16-team trade list for him. And for Ekblad, I think it's 12-team trade list.
Yeah, they have modified no trade clauses.
Well, Ekblad, you can already move on. He just has to submit his 12 teams that he doesn't.
They're going to keep Ekblad this year because why wouldn't you? And
he still has.
He has one more year. So I think Ekblad is the type of guy you trade over the off season, same as Bob. Those are off season trades. Maybe at the draft or some. You can try to see if you can make some moves, get some picks, free up the cap space. Those are guys you trade for cap space. So you trade Bob with some retention, and then maybe a pick, and then the same with Ekblad. Use that money in the offseason, the free agency, and then you go after a couple of free agents to fill up the gaps. Try to re-sign maybe Reinhardt, Montour, and Montour's not killing it right now on offense, which actually kind of helps us. Maybe we can get him for that $7 million number, which would be good. Maybe Forsling the same for like 6.5, maybe ideally. And then Reinhardt, if we can keep our 8 or under, and then trade Verhaeghe, maybe trade Ekblad and Montour. Ekblad and Bob, and then maybe bring back Bennett. and that's use some of that money to bring back Bennett and
and Bennett and
one more free agent on for the top 6 and one free agent for the top 4 on defense to replace Edblatt. Then you have the kids coming up. Then you have Sordev and Mackey and Benning, who does have skill, man, that they're going to contribute. They're going to have good depth. And you keep Stenlin, you keep Lomberg, you keep some Gajovic, some of that physical depth. And you can always find those big veterans like Kulikov out there every year. Those guys are always available.
Yeah, you're always going to have to.
And you got Lusty, and you got Rodriguez, and you got Mikola. So
yeah, for 3 years. That's why I'm like focusing on that 3 year.
Yeah, but the team is solid, man. It's just replacing 2 or 3 guys next year to make the cap work.
No, and you're right about the cap, and that was my point earlier that I kind of went away from with the cap. Is that right? You free up. Let's say you free up Bob this offseason, which I don't know if they will. Maybe they'll wait another year, but you try to free him up get him off the books this offseason. You get $6 million off. You get Ekblad off. Maybe you retain a couple of mil there. That's $11 million. You can resign Reinhardt easily. You can sign another winger for that third line. You can extend Lundell if you wish to do so at 3 or 4, and that covers just what you freed up. Obviously, that's counting on Spencer Knight coming up. You keep Stolars or whoever as a backup. Doesn't really matter. Just get $1 million goalie. There's a ton of backups out there that are capable, and you go from there. Obviously, it's a risk because you don't know what you're going to get with Knight. I think that's the biggest question. You can always then just pivot if he's not working out by the end of this year. Then you can trade him. It's a cheap contract, and he has a lot of upside. And goalies tend to start to blossom, by age 24, 25 or whatever. And he's not even there yet. So there's different ways that Zito can go. I think the next 2 years is when he's really going to be able to work his magic without having to be so restricted. And that's a good thing because even with the restrictions, he's done the best he can. Last season was not great with, Colin White and bringing in Cousins and stuff. And I think Cousins makes sense to them just because he's more physical or whatever, even though he's a little guy. He's feisty. I think if you trade, you trade Ekblad and Bob for just whatever 5th round pick just to clear that cap space, then you can afford to give Reinhardt his 8. If he wants more than that, then it has to be very short term, and you have to have a plan for your third line then. Because then if you do resign Reinhardt, what I like about that is that, and you get one of Bennett or Verhaeghe the following season, then you have 5 of the top 6 lines complete, and you can kind of plug in another guy there. I don't know how they'll go about it.
Well, bro, I'm good at math off the top of my head, 40% retention of Bob, that's $6 million, 7.5, Ekblad 13.5, Verhaeghe 17.6. You let go of Cousins, Mahura, and Lawrence. That's $20 million. Then you have the $4 million going up on the cap. That's $24 million on cap space, right? And then what do you need to do? You need to resign Forsland. Let's say that goes up by like $2 million. So that's 22. Let's say that Monter's contract doubles up, so that goes by 3.5, right? So that's 18.5. Let's say that you have to re-sign Reinhardt and give him 8, so that's 1.5. That's 18 mil. And then from there, then you have cap for a Lundell extension, a top 6 guy for 4 or 5 mil, a top 4 guy on defense for 5 mil. You can resign Bennett for 5.5, something like that, and then bring up the kids. And you can bring back Lumber. I didn't count Lumber because they say that you get Lumber for about the same money or $1 million. Stenlin the same. Gajovic, you keep those guys, so they're already included in the cap.
Yeah, I would definitely keep that 4th line. I would extend them for like 2 years each, maybe.
Yeah,
whatever you
keep the number low, keep it up to $1 million, but for like 2 to 3 years each, and they're all going to give you play for 2 to 3 years. So, and then all of a sudden you've got a team with Ekblad and Verhaeghe being replaced by similar comparable talent at this point in their careers. You're keeping the guys that are giving you the core and the leadership. You still have Barkov and Kachuk with a few years left of excellent play. You replace Bob with another goalie and put him in a tandem with either Knight, or you trade Knight and bring another veteran in and have a 2 tandem goalie. And, with Bob's level of play, that's probably going to get the same level with a good 2 tandem.
Yeah.
And that's how the NHL works these days. And then And then you get the kids, and that's the X factor. The X factor is what is Mackey and Sordif and Bennett giving you, which is a lot of really good talent with a lot of experience from the AHL, not being like green rookies with some skill to plug in, and all of a sudden you have a little bit of less journeyman, a bit more top level skill with some of these tougher like $1 million guys. And again, you have Rodriguez and Lusty and Lundy and Mikola to plug in wherever makes sense for you to plug them in. If there are injuries, those guys can step up and play in the top 6 or top 4. So all to say that I think Cito is a good architect. So I think we're set up for a good thing. It's just the curiosity of who's going to stay and who's going to go. And I know that Cito probably has a plan A, B, and C for each one of these guys, depending on what money or if they had to be traded. So
no, and the positive, like if you want to keep Verhaeghe because you want to keep him, I think he's clutch when you need him in the playoffs. Then like you can pay him easily. I mean, Verhaeghe will take 6.5 in a heartbeat. He doesn't do anything else other than score basically. I mean, he's a good, forechecker or whatever. But yeah, like if you look at it that way, once you get past Bob and Ekblad's contract, like the sky's the limit as far as what you want to do. And as you mentioned, if you bring on Mackey and Sordif only, and they complement your third and fourth line, let's say, or whatever you want to do, then you can afford to pay a Reinhardt or maybe even a top guy. You can bring in a $10 million winger if you want that, it's going to make your top 2 lines legit. You can do both of those things. You can do all of that. You can resign everybody with that money and bring in a $7 or $8 million guy to complete your top 2 lines. I think that it makes sense. I think Zito's had a plan all along. The only year that he went for it was the President's Trophy 2 years ago. And, whatever. We traded away some picks. Doesn't matter because he seems to have hit on a lot of the kids in the later rounds. So that kind of makes up for the lack of, like, first round.
Yeah. And I'll say, because I know we got to go. I know that you mentioned that for this year, the Kraken had like 4 scouts of the Panthers games against.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk about that. Yeah.
No, but I just wanted to say, like, for me, we still need that third line center, get Cousins out of there. I don't care if here are some, like, not predictions, because obviously I'm going to give you about 5 different things, so they're not predictions, but one option I would explore is Jesse Puljujarvi, who's coming back from the hip surgery, just like Kane, 25 years old, upside, big body, can hit, has some skill, has had his struggles. He's never going to be that top 5 pick that he was, but we don't need him to be that. Put him on the third line and see if he can give you some scoring and some solid play and see what happens. And he'd probably be kind of a prove-it deal, very cheap. So one option that I wouldn't mind trying out. Otherwise, with the Kraken coming in, I told you Yamamoto, Tolvanen, there's a couple of players that are affordable that we can move a couple of small pieces and fit into the third line. I actually think there's a lot of upside for some of those guys. Yamamoto's really struggling over there, playing on the fourth line now, I think. So he's a guy that I would like to try to see. He can skate and he can shoot. So Tolvanen too is younger, has upside. And if not, then Jakub Vrana from St. Louis being benched. He's a 20-goal scorer, proven scorer, has had injury issues, has struggled, doesn't fit in St. Louis, but he's a big guy who can shoot. He's a right winger. So a lot of these guys I'm mentioning are right wingers who can play the right wing for the third line. So keep an eye out for Cito making a move for one of those guys because he was obviously going after Kane for that reason. So he knows we need another winger. So I don't think that third line is going to be a third line going into the playoffs. And if the team's already looking at us, like the Kraken, who need those guys, the St. Louis struggling again. And so I really would love for Cito to make a move actually before the deadline for one of those guys. He actually might be cheaper when the teams are struggling and before more people come knocking. So if we can move Mahura or a pick or Cousins or whatever and try to get one of these guys for a pick or Mahura who has upside as a defenseman, I'd say do it, man.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely need to strengthen our third line. We just need to get a scorer there or somebody that can at least open up the game a little bit.
Yeah.
So that it makes sense to then have Lundell and Lusty play their game because that's what they're good at, man. And I think Reinhardt does bring a lot of value because clearly he opened up that third line last year and the year before with Marchman as well.
Yeah,
So,
man.
yeah.
And I'm taking credit, bro. I told you about Josh Davis since the beginning of the season, Baby Lomberg, and he just signed the ELC, so you know
It's
what
Josh
I'm talking
Davies.
about.
Davies.
Davies. That's what I said.
You
Josh
said Davis.
Oh, Davies.
Don't
Bro,
try to take credit.
Baby
You can't
Lomberg.
talk.
Divine's gonna get his ELC by the end of the season.
Baby Lomberg is weird. It's such a weird thing.
It's what they call him. It's what they call him. And then he's a small guy, but he can fight. And Bill Manis is going to get an ELC. Those three guys book it. It's going to be in the Checkers AHL. When Surdef and Mackey come up, they're going to go down there and get their spots. But those three guys, great seasons. Sauchin too, but Sauchin is a lot younger. He's either going to go back to juniors or college, maybe go to college or something for a year. But I suspect because he needs to bulk up a bit more. He's a small guy. But anyway, our rookies and our junior guys are. Most of them are having really, really good seasons, man. Sauchin was injured and came back and immediately had like 5 points in 2 games or whatever. So, yeah, man, I'm excited about the kids. So keep an eye out for those guys.
And those entry-level contracts, you have to take advantage of that because
bro, Jack Devine, 7th round pick, just turned 20 years old, leading college in goals, tied for second in points. His plus minus is great. Legit guy in Denver. Anyway, Cito, bro. Cito Magic.
You're an idiot.
It's what we give you in this podcast that you don't get nowhere else.
If you made it this far,
you're learning about the kids.
Comment below.
Damn kids.
I'm gonna have to send you something, a gift card or something.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I just want to be. I'm telling you, I'm right, man. My research matters. I watch these guys and I follow them and I follow their performances and. It's exciting. I don't know. It's just to think about the future. Anyway. All right, bro. Yeah. Let's see how we do this week. Let's see. We got Penguins. We got Columbus.
Penguins. We got Columbus.
And then the West Coast trip. So.
And then we have 10 o'clock games. 3 straight.
Fucking hate those.
3 straight games. At least it's 10 o'clock. I hate that 10:30.
Yeah,
10 o'clock.
10:30.
10 o'clock. You can like go to sleep by 12:30 at night, but at midnight. But
anyway, I'll follow those and we'll chat about that next week.
All right, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll catch you guys next week. Peace.